What's up, guys? We've been on hiatus in the Siberian winter for a while, and we've come back for a classic video. Now, we could have got this done the day after release, but this is kind of the first time we could meet up and process all that happened in the book. So this is volume 16, so don't worry, there's going to be no spoilers in this video, kind of just our impressions about the theme of the novel, where the author has decided to take the story, and just talk a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit about the future, what we feel, how this book has affected the general arc of the story or where the story's going. Yeah. So first, Josh, let's talk about some of the important characters in this novel.
Okay, so obviously, if you can tell by the cover, which I'll just showcase the book real quick.
Really nice purchase, by the way.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
The physical copy's really working on this one.
Maybe I can even put in some inserts of some of the art in here because it's pretty dope. But you can tell just from the cover there is a big influence on the Freya Familia, and the kind of laning plot that you need to know for the book is that Belle gets a letter from Seer, the waitress at the Benevolent Mistress, to go on a date during this festival that is right off of the last holiday they had from volume 15, and so that has its own kind of implications because we know that Seer has connections with Freya Familia. So some of the important characters is obviously Freya herself. You have the Elite Eight, which if you've seen like our talk of the side novel of Freya Familia, you'll probably know who those are. I won't list them all, but some of the important ones that we get more emphasis on in this book is Hedden, which is a white elf, and I believe he is level 6, if I recall.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of like the strategic, I guess, influencer or warrior that they have for her familia. And it's also kind of revealed that he would have been the second in command if he was willing to accept it. So that's really cool there. As well as you also get Eyes returning for a small bit of the book, and then I would say Hestia and Hermes kind of do have a little bit to go in there as well. Not a whole lot of new characters. There is one other one that is associated with Freya Familia that's named Horn, and literally we've probably seen her in scenes before, but I don't think we've really gotten any information until now. Probably not even known her name, which is ironic because her title is like the Nameless or something like that. But she's like the head Chamberlain of Freya, and she's kind of like the one that you always see that is by her side when she's sitting up there in Babel Tower. But yeah, that's kind of like the setup for that. Michael, what do you want to tackle first? Because there is a lot of stuff associated with just this simple plot. Like, I think one of the things that blew me away is just the amount that they pack into this volume. Not only in like the adding the complexity and multiple levels of this date, but also just like what's surrounding the city and what new we learned from it as well.
Yeah. So. Let's talk a little bit about the character pairing. So in this novel, we have the waitress and the Benevolent Mistress kind of like operate as a unit throughout the whole volume, and then we have Hestia and Eyes operating together for certain reasons, which is fun. We get some background shots and dialogue between the Hestia Familia members. I think there's one scene in their house that's kind of cute. Oh, yeah. Just like them being together and hanging out. As far as notes that stand out, I think there's we aren't going to talk about the end in specifics, but the end is something that I think hits some of our readers pretty heavy. It was pretty meaningful. Yeah. But we also have some interesting side moments. There's characters in places where they wouldn't usually be, doing things they wouldn't usually do.
Classic example, the Hestia Familia being at the tavern. That's a great one.
Yeah, and then there's also some really interesting world building elements as far as the city. Now, we got some of that in that last novel, but I don't know for everyone, but for me, some of those world building moments fell flat in this one. But because they were so well integrated into the story, the locations that we visit here are more meaningful. There's a church, cathedral, as well as another like relic site, I guess I can say to avoid some spoilers there. Right. Both of which have interesting scenes, and I think will play a part as Belle continues on his journey to be what he wants to be.
Yeah. One of the things, just tying into that point, that I did like about it is that, as we kind of talked about Volume 15. It's like, it was a mixed bag. A lot of the stuff that took place in the timeline that we're at right now was great. Some of the back stuff, take it or leave it. But I did like the connection that it had off of that. And I did like the theme it played into where, the holiday that we saw, I can't remember what the specific name of it, the one where it
It's a harvest festival. Or, the other one before it, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like mourning the heroes that have fallen and like respecting the sacrifice they've given. I do love how that has like a very somber feeling amongst the city, and that the whole purpose of this festival is not only to like Michael said, kind of celebrate the bountifulness of the harvest, but also kind of cheer the city back up and get them back into a lively manner. So I do love how, the kind of lore that they build around there. Plus, we get some really cool locales. Like, there's parts of the city that we may have, like, gotten inklings of in the past volumes, but this is kind of like the first time I feel like we're actually in the streets of these parts of the city. Like, even there's a scene on a boat that kind of talks about the waterways of the city that I don't think we've really gotten mentioned that those even existed. So I think having something like that is also just another fun little kind of like outing setting that we had in terms of the date. But along with everything else, there's also kind of a mystery that's kind of woven in here. I won't go into specifics because it is very spoiler heavy, but there is kind of this mystery and intrigue that you have with certain identities, and I think it's even been a long tease for the series that Seer has something to hide, and nobody really knows what it is. Like, you don't really even know how she's connected necessarily to the Freya Familia. So, and it kind of explores that, but it's not like an exposition dump. It really is kind of revealed in a very intriguing way. So
yeah,
and
really something that's so great about this novel is there's so many things to unpack. Like, even now, I was thinking about certain there's a lot of dialogue between two characters where they're expressing their differences of ideas or just kind of expressing what they believe or stand for. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that happening throughout the whole novel. In regards to heroes, so heroes are a big theme in this novel, as it has in the last one. I think we've talked about a lot on this channel, and if you go back and look at our reviews, one of the key turning points in the novel, in this novel series, was when Bell kind of defined what a hero was. And whereas he didn't necessarily accept the public's perception of a hero, he created his own what he viewed as what he should do if he wanted to act like a hero. And in this novel, you kind of get some completion of that theme, where Bell understands that the previous heroes, while he looked up to them as a kid, while he still has that desire to be a hero, they were not perfect people. And not only did they fail professionally sometimes, but also in the personal relationship with which they developed. So that's a main theme that you see in this book, and how he's going to try to be different from those heroes, or how he's still struggling with what he is going to be if he ever becomes a hero. Yeah,
and I think it's really cool to see Bell kind of processing this, because it kind of elevates what he's taking from all the greatest heroes and elevating it to like the next level. So it's really kind of cool to see that aspect shown in kind of the what would you call it, the self-reflecting moments in the volume, but also connecting it to some of the lore instances that we talked about. Like, for instance, I won't go into detail, but just like the Heroes Bridge is a cool thing that connects that, because you kind of see how Bell's processing it, and then how it might relate to, like what we might see forward and interacting with something like that. Without, we can go more into like the other thing, but yeah, there's also I thought a really cool what would you call it, kind of duality that they kind of touch on too, because there's a lot of moments in the volume I think you really do see how far Bell has matured as an adventurer. I mean, we've seen this time and time again as the volumes like progress and like the higher numbers we get, but I do really love whether it's just like his precision and like moving through the crowd, or like there's a moment with a confrontation of a character towards the end where he has very good calculations, and it's set up like a long time before, and you kind of see like, it was almost like a chess move he made, like 10 moves ahead, and I really do like that. And seeing that, it gives a really great feeling, seeing how far Bell's come. But I do love how they also touch on that, in his personal life, he's still very much a kid, and he doesn't really have, or he hasn't had a lot of opportunities to experience like relationships or dates, so this is something that's completely foreign to him. And I do like how they keep intact his character in how he would relate or interact in those moments, but also getting us something that maybe's a cool like wish for fans, seeing him maybe a little bit different than what he acts, but still staying true to his character at the end of the day.
Yeah. So there's a lot of nuggets of conversation that you can go back and look at and just think about where the author's going to, if you really like the series, where the author's going to go with things. But I think the ending kind of made this book. There's a tendency, if you don't know where this is going, or if you don't see where it's going, it's like, why are we spending a whole book on this? Do we got to go to the dungeon, or we got to kill some stuff, which they are in the dungeon for a little bit. But with the ending, I think it wraps up in a nice bow. You understand what the whole book is trying to convey, and honestly, this is probably one of the few books. There's movies like this as well, where you go back and watch it several times. This is a book that I probably will read again, kind of knowing where the ending is, to try to get more insight on some of those dialogue moments, which even Josh and I had conversations about that after we both finished the book too, just kind of going over ideas or what the author was thinking in a good way, where he was going with things. Yeah,
this is definitely one of those books, or just stories in general, that getting to the end will definitely change your perception of the ride that you had before it. Because I know, even for myself, I've never been I was intrigued by what Seer has potential to offer, because we didn't know a lot about her, and I thought there was something purposely hidden there. But outside of that, from what we saw, there was nothing that really seemed that intriguing to me. It seemed kind of basic as her character that's shown. So there's a couple of moments, in the moment where Belle and Seer are interacting, my enjoyment level is a little bit lower, but just the fact that it's that character specifically. But once you get to the end and you see kind of the full scope of what the author intended, I think looking back at those, it's I actually like that a lot more. And like Michael, I think I would probably even more so enjoy it on a reread, and I would like to go back to do that. But there's also some really cool, setting up for a potential conflict later on. I think there's not many times, specifically in Danmachi, where we've had a whole book to set up, I don't want to say villain, but just a conflict that's coming.
Force.
Yeah, this towering presence that you're going to have to go up against. Because a lot of the ones have been introduced and dealt with in the same book. At least first conflict with them has been in the same book as they were introduced, right? So I think it's kind of cool to see something where we actually do get almost a prelude to the conflict, and then we're going into a full arc with that already established. So I think it's going to lead to a lot more action and a lot more interesting dialogue. But I think the coolest thing too is that there's a lot of things that the reader knew that our protagonist characters didn't know, and seeing that come to light for them is probably the most intriguing part. Obviously there's still some things that are still hidden to them that we're going to save for reveals, but there's definitely a lot of moments though that you get kind of what you wanted. I think there was at least 2 moments that we had talked about that I kind of wanted to see. I was talking how it would be really cool if we saw Belle with the F.F.A familiar member in the dungeon. And I was I don't know what circumstances that would have to happen in order for us to get that, but I would think that would be really cool. And I thought it was going to be I was hoping it was Otter, because Otter's just so mysterious and cool. But they did it with a different character that I think in story-wise, it lines up better, and it was still just as enjoyable. Like, I think that was a really good shout-out to the book. There was also another moment that maybe we can talk about more in detail, too, in the spoiler-filled discussion. But, yeah, overall, this book has just been really enjoyable. I think what's to come is probably going to be explosive, but thankfully we got a nice little cap here for satiating my willingness to hold off until then. But Michael, do you have anything in closing to say before we? I'm trying real hard not to throw out spoilers. So
there's a lot of spoilers. The other thing I'm interested in, I wonder if some of y'all are into this data collecting stuff. I wonder how this book sold in the U.S. Obviously, I think if you're a Danmachi fan, this is kind of a core book that you have to get. I mean, this ain't no side story book. This is this is core to the future of the universe of Danmachi. But I wonder how it's sold here and how it's sold in Japan. I feel like I don't know much about the author. It's kind of hard to get a lot of information in the West about how old he is, what is his viewpoint on the show, and what is his view. Is he focused on writing books or is he focused on making the anime?
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little salty when I read his author's note at the end, and he's like, "Oh, I made the deadline for this book," and I'm like, "No, you did not to us." But I get it though. It's Japan first. That's okay.
Yeah. So
dude goes there, he does good here.
There's always concerns with something like Overlord. Where I feel like the author's kind of rushing because he wants to end the project. I hope this author still has passion after how many years of doing it, and I think you can see that in this volume as well. So I'm excited for the future of the show, or of the books and everything.
It's interesting though because what is it? The very first line here. Let me see if I can get to it. The very first line that the author says for his after notes is the last boss is closing in. So I'm curious to know exactly if that's a definitive thing for the series or if that just means for this specific group. But that's a nice little tease. He doesn't even talk about it any more than that one sentence. So it's not much, but there's plenty of speculation stuff to go on to.
All right, it's time, Josh.
It's time. So in closing, I think we already established how much we like the book, but to reiterate what I said in the last volume review, that was kind of a book that if it took the interlude moments and made it into a whole a whole volume, I'd just eat it up. I'd love it. And I think in a lot of ways this volume is that, so it's kind of funny how fast that came to fruition when I said it. I think while it does have some moments that maybe at the beginning you're scratching your head of like Michael said, why do we need this? This is kind of seeming like it's lower scale for the plot of things. I think they wove in the overarching stuff very well. And I think even though it is abrupt ending, it is one hell of a cliffhanger. So for that, I'm going to give it a F.F.A. It has just been really solid, and I can't wait to reread it and in preparation for the next volume because I think that's going to be really explosive. So.
Yes, so I talked about this with Josh already a little bit, that I think this is probably the best a volume can get that doesn't have a ton of action. I think as far as dialogue and just story writing and just the story in general, it was close to perfect. So I would go with an F.F.A. as well. It's probably not my favorite book, but it is a close second. And like I said, we still got to read it a second time. Yeah. So our impressions of the book may change to be more positive after reading it again. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely probably my top 3 books, which is pretty good for it being the 16th out of a series.
Yeah. Now the question I have to all of you, and maybe even Michael, is do you think that reading the F.F.A. side series elevates your enjoyment of this volume if you read that beforehand, or do you think it still has the same impact if this was the first outing to F.F.A. Familia? Because I asked that because in the mainline series, I think this is the first book that has F.F.A. as a prominent role, so, or at least her Familia. So I'm just curious if anybody has thought about that or what they might think or say to that. But yeah, we'll let you guys go with that. And be sure to put down questions for the next rapid fire because I know we're behind, but we're going to be doing that. So yeah, if you have anything that you'd like to ask off of new information we got from this volume, put it down below. But
All right.
as always, guys, I guess we'll get out of here and be sure to check us back for the spoiler discussion. But until then, guys, peace, addicts.
Later.